So, we have a tale of greed, lust, and more greed ahead of you.
Incest. No, I'm just kidding.
Actually, if we get a good point to insert this, somebody at work has a little personal interaction with the daughter of this individual. We are going to talk about Gene Simmons and how dirty some of his tactics have been. We've talked about not giving, the light of day to certain individuals.
Yeah, we try not to, but
this
sometimes
is...
you want to call them out.
Yeah. As metal fans, it's good to bring this out because heavy metal is a very, male-dominated genre, and there's just some gross things that are done to the women within it that are just kind of, swept aside.
It's also fallen under the microscope. It falls under the microscope over the course of time. It's fallen back under the microscope in recent times with certain topics, and this one we're definitely going to focus on sexism.
Yeah, that's one of the main talking points.
It's abused to the point that it's used for marketing.
Right.
For a lot of bands, or a number of bands that are female fronted, or all female groups, where maybe it's not their intention, but that's how some fans eat it up, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, because they're preying on that aspect of people to not necessarily relate to it, just taking it to their advantage. As there was a statistic in an article that came out this week that if you have a daughter first as a man, you are more receptive to women's rights because it directly affects you. But it takes that for a lot of people. Oh, now this directly affects me. Now I'm receptive to it.
Because you never know, or you're not ready to defend against something until you get fucking hit with it.
But
or you're not aware of it until you get hit with it.
We want to try and be a little bit more progressive with that, and it does directly affect us because, women are people too. Oh my God. What a concept. Not only that, but this is also about the greed of the music industry versus its counterculture face. And it also kind of comes from this being debased and reduced to the local level, where you start to see these things come out in
your smaller circle.
Yeah. You see these people being called out through social media groups and stuff like that, where it's a social media community page, and somebody is going to put out an alert about a certain individual. And then it's also the contrast of somebody abusing that.
The same, yeah, like you said, in the contrast, somebody abusing that, it's a dangerous balance there at some point.
So, this individual that we are going to talk about is one of the old gods of heavy metal, Gene Simmons.
Gene
Simmons. The Cthulhu tongue
yeah,
of sorts. So, in a nosy column written by Drew Millard, he was referred to as being kind of like a low-stakes version of Donald Trump. Cornily opulent, a bullshit artist per excellence, and
just
shamelessly
slapping the brand on anything that he can.
Shamelessly willing to slap his brand on something for a buck.
Gene Simmons or KISS.
But that's the thing. That's one of the things I don't have a understanding of is, was it KISS as an entity or was it Gene Simmons? Because
driving the brand.
At the beginning of KISS, they had a manager who was basically like, you guys suck. You guys sound like shit. And
some manager.
They basically fired him, and Gene Simmons was the one to take over the branding, basically. So I think he was more the one who was driving this, this kind of Lucas-like everything that we
train.
can, everything
This
that
war
we can
machine.
sell. So he had a show that a lot of people in our generation will probably be familiarized with him about that I am not familiar about. I was more of an Osbourne's person.
It's all at the same time. I don't remember the name of the show, but Gene Simmons had his own little spin-off reality family drama.
Yeah,
where he was the father figure.
Ozzy Osbourne sold it first, and that's
As
what
the
got the success.
Bumbling, stuttering,
Sharon! Sharon!
incoherent father figure to
And even them, they've broken out.
Gene Simmons, who I've caught a couple episodes.
To Hulk Hogan.
That's true. There was the Hulk Hogan show.
Yeah.
And they both kind of portrayed a similar father figure of supposedly a father with some wisdomly advice, which, how true is that?
I don't know if I got that from the Osbournes watching it as a kid.
I'm not saying that. I said Hulk Hogan and Gene Simmons. The Osbournes was Ozzy is just in the background mumbling incoherently while Shannon and...
So you know how to work the remote?
I'm sorry, what was
I don't know how to work the remote,
this?
Sharon.
It was his daughter and son going through trials and tribulations. I don't remember his son or daughter's name.
Jack Osbourne was his son. Kelly Osbourne was his daughter.
There you go. Was she on American Idol or something like that?
No, Sharon Osbourne was on American Idol as a judge.
But Kelly had like a brief stint as a solo
yeah,
singer.
she did. She even had like a thing on Eric Andre. She
Really?
went on Eric Andre just took it to her, man. Like
That's good, because that's what he does.
Now, honestly, I feel like she grew up, like she was a little bit of a brat. Both of the kids were on the show, but they both kind of grew up and, came into their own light. But I kind of felt like Kelly on Eric Andre. She just like didn't get it at all and was like, but that's what they want on that kind of show.
That's exactly what they want. But Gene Simmons, Hulk Hogan, the family dramas of yesteryear with your favorite figures being the father figure.
Yep.
And they were all semi-disastrous.
I had not seen the Gene Simmons take on that. And one of my first exposures to him just being this old, out of touch man, and what kind of formed my initial opinion of was just like, this guy is talking directly about myself being kind of like a lower level musician and my perspective on it, where it's like he was this old grandfathered figure bitching about how he can't make a buck anymore following the same business model, where I was a starving fucking artist giving my shit out for free just because I wanted some exposure. And he already had all this.
Yeah,
he already had a fucking TV show.
Fads change, things move on and change, and it's...
But he was one of those older men who just had to speak up about it. And through that, he alienates.
You didn't like being blamed as a generational failure?
He alienates people who looked up to him, So that EDM, hip-hop, kind of took more of the rock and roll standpoint, where that's what was the popular music at the time. And probably still is now. It's more popular than rock and roll. It's kind of more popular than metal.
I will put rock and roll and metal kind of in a similar boat, just for exposure and size-wise.
But once you get into that community, you understand how it's like...
It's different.
Yeah, it's very different,
It's
to the
vastly
point where people will be like, I'm not into this at all.
Yeah.
Like, rock and roll nowadays would be Five Finger Death Punch.
And metal would be...
At the gates.
But I can see how those could get lumped together. It's just a band versus the EDM rap single man acts for the most part, almost.
So basically, hip hop had kind of like taken over EDM. KISS had released some new albums, some lackluster album sales.
I mean, they had a fucking disco album, damn near.
I know, that's the goddamn thing of it. Like, they sold the fuck out so hard just to stay relevant even in the time. And not even to stay relevant, they would have stayed relevant anyways. But they're just trying to suck every single buck out of
I bet Gene
shit.
Simmons made some statements like that around that new metal phase where it's just like, oh man, these
That
guys
was
just
one of those things. No. Gene Simmons actually put out a new metal cover of a techno song. I forget what it was. Dude, this, I'm going to have to, I saw this. I'm going to have to go to you to look this up. Just look up Gene Simmons new metal.
It'll come right up.
Yep. So hip-hop and EDM were taking the modern spotlight. Lackluster KISS album sales. They were trying to, sell it to a new generation. And he kind of came out in an article just talking about how rock is dead. And he pissed off a lot of musicians that KISS had inspired. This was one of the, I don't know, maybe last straws. Because this was well after some other shit that I wasn't even aware of. This was one of the things that kind of tipped me off because I'm not a KISS fan. I've not been following this narrative. So in 2014, they're getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Did you find the...
No, I'm having some difficulty finding it. I did find an
put
article.
Gene Simmons new metal.
I did.
Okay.
What I got was an article saying that Fox News had banned Gene Simmons from appearing on their
Oh, yeah. We're going to get to that.
I did not get the actual song, though.
Yeah, Fox News did end up banning him after an appearance. So the 2014 induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This was a moment that kind of went beyond alienating the bands that liked them, that were like rising to prominence, and just alienated the fans to all hell. So the stipulation of KISS being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was only the original members were going to be inducted.
Which, for those of you that are unfamiliar, that would have been Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, lifelong members. That would have been Ace Frehley and Peter Criss.
Mm-hmm.
But Ace Frehley and Peter Criss both quit the band at an early stage.
Yep. Chris left in 1980. Frehley left in 1982. And I wouldn't necessarily say that's early. Chris left after 7 years. They were formed in 1973.
Still a long tenure, but they would eventually be replaced, and the people that would play at the Rock Hall of Fame would have been Tommy Thayer and, I believe, Eric Singer
Now,
to take their roles.
what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame wanted to do was induct the people who wrote the music, because those latter members that you named, they didn't write any new material. They
Not
just
the-
basically...
Definitely not the memorable music that people and fans would have been thinking was being justifiably put into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
They wore the makeup of Chris and Frehley, basically. For... What was it? I don't know.
I got it right here. Ace Frehley and Peter Criss's makeup was adopted by the respective member that would take their role around 2002, 2004 for each one. So, I mean, they were just copying their styles instead of adding their own, for at least for the face paint perspective. Nothing against Eric Singer or Tommy Thayer.
I mean, that's a very common format that we find nowadays, where just you more commonly have metal bands nowadays that have no original members at all.
Unfortunately.
So for this reuniting, for the induction, they just were going to play 2 to 3 songs for the ceremony. Simmons and Stanley refused to play because the other two current members were not being inducted too. So I can kind of see that coming off. Like, I can kind of see their perspective of it because they kept the brand going. But to be honest,
those guys are still technically a part of KISS,
but they weren't part of the
OG
writing.
The OG,
not necessarily the OG, but the stuff. KISS didn't really do anything in that era that they were being recognized for. They wrote their fucking material.
But the stuff people are looking at are like Creatures of the Night. That's a fucking absolutely awesome album, and stuff like that. That's stuff with
basically everything.
That's stuff with Freely and Peter Criss. You know, that's the stuff that people, when they think of KISS, those are the albums they think of.
Up till Alive 2 is the figure that I've been put up. If you look at a discography, basically what people love is Alive 2 and below. So basically they denied the fans this little cherry on top of the legacy that they really wanted. They just wanted to see this one show. Just reunite with the fucking band for one show, get inducted to the Hall of Fame. It's all they wanted to see. I don't give a shit. But it was just this kind of douchey thing. It's like, well, you know,
I mean,
you can't see the principles of just like what the fans want to see.
I want to touch on their discography. You're talking about consistent releases damn near every year up until 1986, 1987-ish. Even 1989. Like it's almost every year you're getting a new album.
When's Alive and Alive 2?
And that takes you right up to, those aren't on here because they're live albums.
But that's, dude,
that takes you right up to when Ace Frehley and Peter Criss leave.
That's one of the things that I didn't include in this doc, and it's something that I remember from KISS being put in my face, is that their success did not come from their studio albums. It came from the energy of their live albums.
Performances.
No, yes, they sold their live shows like a motherfucker, but they didn't really get success with albums until they started putting out live albums. And that's when their albums really started to sell. That was one of the things with KISS, is that studio, lackluster. Live, whoa, bam. That's like where it was.
My experience with KISS is Love Gun, Creatures of the Night, and Lick It Up. I mean, that's a song that I think up until maybe 5 years ago you could have still heard on the radio. I'm sure they still play it now, but
absolutely,
for the most part, the only thing I hear on the radio anymore is Metallica.
With a relation to this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, Gene Simmons has been quoted complaining about Run DMC and Grandmaster Flash being in the Hall of Fame. Just because they're hip hop, because they don't play guitars, because they don't sing.
Rock and roll.
Yeah,
I think you're in the Hall of Fame. You need to just be happy with that, and I think you need to accept the fact. I get it; it's hard to accept the fact that times are changing, but times are changing, and the attitude that rap and hip hop and stuff brought during that time was just as counterculture.
Absolutely.
Rock and roll, punk, or metal, whatever, brought to the forefront. And that's what it's really all about, is bringing a counterculture attitude to the music to express yourself in a way that you maybe can't necessarily do without a musical platform, and bring your viewpoints to the forefront. Now, there's a vast difference between Run DMC and some hip-hop groups talking about problems, where KISS is sitting there talking about licking it up.
No, I want to rock and roll all night. And I want to shoot my cock off like a love gun.
Yeah.
Basically.
There's some differences there. Not all the time. I mean,
you are borderline on the edge of disco, which I always kind of thought was funny about Detroit Rock City. You have the rockers versus the Stellas, and the rockers want to go see KISS. And it's basically the same thing, but that's what they get to at the end of the movie, is that they all get along and they fall in love. You know? So, Simmons has gone on the record as saying, quote, "You've got Grandmaster Flash in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Run DMC in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You're killing me. That doesn't mean those aren't good artists, but they don't play guitar. They sample and they talk, not even sing." And that just goes to show how the man doesn't get it. Like, he's showing how your age is showing, Gene. You know?
At the same time, I can understand a viewpoint of, it's a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's only meant for rock and roll.
In name. Like, okay.
But he might take it that literally.
That is what he
but I agree.
is absolutely denying. If he is going into defining it as rock and roll came from blues. Blues came from old Negro spirituals. That came from slave songs. It comes from blacks in America singing their woes to pass the time, singing just the soul that translated into rock and roll, and that was the archetype of the stir fry, where you got Elvis Presley shaking his hips around,
and the women just collapsing all around him.
I
agree with that. The rock, as I even said in my previous statement, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame should be a place where a counterculture should be enshrined as a way, in your words, to enshrine the voice of the soul.
So in a 2016 Rolling Stone interview, he was quoted as saying, "Rap will die next year, 10 years from now, at some point, and then something else will come along."
Now, that is not necessarily 100% untrue, that opening statement.
Yep. He goes on to, say more than he should. And all that is good and healthy, and I am looking forward to the death of rap, as he says. "I'm looking forward to music coming back to lyrics and melody instead of just talking. A song, as far as I'm concerned, is by definition lyric and melody, or just melody."
That is a personal opinion at this point. This is all a personal opinion.
Now, here is where the failings come. I don't have the cultural background, as quoted by Simmons, to appreciate being a gangster. Of course, that's not what it's all about, but that's where it comes from. The heart and soul of it, it comes from the streets. Now, he's saying that he doesn't necessarily identify with someone who is essentially been inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that is his peer. Like, he's just a black guy who grew up in New York, too. Now, granted, Simmons was an immigrant, but Grandmaster Flash and Simmons both grew up in New York around the same time period.
I don't think overall his statement is necessarily that bad. I mean, he states that he's under the impression that rap will peter off. That's not necessarily an unjust assessment of it.
You even have rap artists nowadays demonizing the younger rappers Like you have old school rappers.
Yeah. I'm not saying that this is it's. I'm not saying that you should be wishing the death upon this, but he's saying that I think it'll peter out. He wants it to fade away so that it can go back to being a form of music that he thinks he'd be familiar with. That's a mistake. Like things change and grow into new things. It's very unlikely that there's going to be a resurgence of bands like KISS within the next 20 years, or even in the
disco ain't coming back, baby.
yeah. And his final statement about he doesn't have the cultural background to appreciate being a gangster. I think
I
maybe
feel like,
maybe he's probably phrasing it in a poor way, but he is a Jewish immigrant. I can understand where he would maybe be framing this in a sense of I don't have a reference for a hip hop quote unquote gangster background.
but one of the things that I wanted to drive home with that was because a lot of old dogs kind of tend to not identify with the same kind of street struggle just because it's spoken in different terms.
Yeah, I saw that It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Frank Reynolds was part of a gang and they were a doo-wop group.
I actually had a conversation with my pops about
Straight West Side Story, baby.
the differences between gangs in, the 50s and 60s versus gangs now. Like, gangs used to be somewhat of a rite of passage as like a young man, like tunnel snakes
Yeah.
in
Hop in
Fallout.
the El Camino and go smoke some grits.
It was
underneath the old bridge.
packs of young men, packs of young people, and just like cliques, and they used to fight each other and maybe beat each other up.
What was that,
but they weren't.
What was that book we had to read as required curriculum? The Outsiders?
I didn't watch it. Wasn't that a movie?
Yeah, I think it was too, but it was a book.
To be honest, a lot of the books, unless I was hooked like immediately, I didn't read them in
Yeah,
high
they
school.
weren't.
I just did the cliff notes, and you got by.
I agree.
If you were smart enough, you
I
could
agree,
do the book
that's
report.
What I did. But the Outsiders, I think, was about kind of the 50s style gang with the slick back, brake grease hair and the rolled up sleeves with the Marlboro pack in there and the
Even with more militant groups,
pants.
you didn't have them just outright attacking people like they do now. Now it's a little bit different. You have certain people who have manipulated
But in
the
a way,
structure of a gang, and they've based it around the way, like like I had said before in a previous episode, it's very much like McDonald's, where like the guy serving you the burgers, taking your order, is getting paid very little, and the gangs are franchising.
But in a way, isn't that sort of what his statement says? Is he doesn't have the he says it in not the best manner, but that's kind of what he's saying, where he doesn't have a background or frame of reference to appreciate the heart and soul of it.
Maybe.
Oh, Gene, but we're going to still keep going. I don't know how long I can keep the blockers up.
That's the thing, though. But wait, there's more.
There's way more.
So, we are going to move on to, this is the meat and potatoes of, like, I did not know. I knew Gene Simmons was kind of like an unsavory character. I knew he was kind of an asshole, but this is kind of what brought it to...
How did you catch this? Because I think I heard it a long, long time ago. Was this just came up
when
on a
I
feed?
started digging? No. I started digging around because some of the formats that I appreciate for this podcast format, where it's just like a radio show, it's open conversation. It's not NPR. To tell you the truth, the NPR radio podcast format bores me. I fucking hate that, where it's just overproduced. It's like, well, this individual went out to Drake County, and this is what they had to say. Well, you know.
A long time ago, maybe 6-7 years ago, this is what I used to listen to at work, because it was different from, because at the time I wasn't actually allowed to have my cell phone in my place of work whatsoever. So I had a radio, and guess what? All the radio stations out here suck dong, and they play the same songs every 3 hours. Mm-hmm. So that got really tiring. So I switched over to NPR, where they had the talk show format. There was a lot of stuff going on. You get random TED Talks, all this other stuff. I don't really appreciate TED Talks that much majority of the time. They had interviews. They had small documentary-style segments where they talked about a subject. And they held me over for a long time, but they started to recycle them because NPR has a relatively small budget, and it seems like they just purchase content from select people over time, and then they recycle it.
But you know what I mean when you listen to something like RadioLab, not RadioLOUD. You hear this kind of like, here is our subject, A, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I was about to go into this bar or fish in this lake. And then, and he has been like this all of his life. Like it is not a conversation. It is so bland.
It's like two pod people talking to each other. Yeah, I've been there.
I completely stopped broadcasting us on the podcast subreddit because of that. Because that's what they praise there. They want to be, this cookie cutter.
They want everybody to be a Terry Gross interview.
I like this.
Granted, Terry Gross is a great interviewer.
Yeah. Terry really Gross is a great interview. Let's get back to this.
And I'd just like to say, she's technically, her stuff's on NPR, but she's a Philadelphia radio host. Like, all her interviews are done through the Philly show. Mm-hmm. All right, let's get into this interview.
February 4th, 2004. Terry Gross interview on NPR. It's a show called Fresh Air with Gene Simmons. Now,
it opens up with an incredibly strange introduction.
It talks about Gene Simmons with the
aliases.
Yeah, not necessarily his alias, but his original name, which was Chaim Witz. And Gross makes the mistake of pronouncing Witz white. And
Gene
Simmons is a immigrant from Israel. He moved here when he was 10 years old with his mother, but he calls her a Gentile.
Which is funny because Terry Gross is Jewish. She laughs it off, to her credit.
Yeah, to her credit, this is just at the start of the interview. You can already feel that this is going wrong. So, she moves along to say, how would you describe the pattern on her face?
She talks about, in the beginning course of the interview, she's like, let's talk about the makeup. Like, that was a new shtick. That was a gimmick that had not necessarily been done to that degree at the time.
Yep.
We're talking, if you're not familiar with KISS, we're talking platform shoes, leggings, tongue wagging, face paint, breathing fire. It was a showstopper for sure, which was part of what we had already talked about, where the show was a draw.
Nowadays, it's kind of tame,
I mean, like it or not, that's what some of the black metal draw is. It's the theatrics, especially for me. I go there, you got the face paint, you got fire breathing, you got human skeletons hanging from the rafters and whatever else. It's the theatrics are just as much a part of the act.
Yeah, but those people are not making this kind of money.
No.
And they're not going on NPR.
And as much as they hate to deny it, though, they get a lot of their theme from this, because that's where their idols got this shit from.
KISS, King Diamond,
Yeah.
Corpse Paint.
Which is just hokey black and white Steins.
Yeah. It is literally just making your face so contrast that you kind of look like a skull. You kind of look a little spooky.
But Terry Gross would go through this interview, and she's going to ask Gene Simmons,
how would you describe the pattern on your face? And Simmons replies, a banker's pattern. When you look at it, it says, quote, boy, that guy's got a lot of money, end quote. You know why I'm pulling your leg? Because I can't touch it from where I am. This is a serious, and she laughs it off, this is a serious program, finishes Simmons. And she says, are you trying to
say to me that all that matters to you is money?
Actually, that's the next point. That was like one of the first things, like where he starts to allude that, like, what a fucking predator he is. He's just like saying, like,
you can't grab your leg from here.
So, next point.
I'll read Terry Gross.
Okay.
Are you trying to say to me that all that matters to you is money?
I will contend, this is Gene Simmons now, that you try to disprove it. That is the most important thing, as we know on this planet, in this plane, is, in fact, money. Want me to prove it?
Go ahead.
So, Gene Simmons here. The first thing you need, besides air, which so far is free, and by the way, if you were scuba diving, you're paying for air. On the other thing besides that is food. It's what we need to survive. I don't know what other tool I would use besides money to buy it. Now, here is the kicker. Although, as a woman, of course, you have the ability to sell your body, then get the money, and then with that get food. But ultimately, money is a part of it.
You are weird, Terry Gross.
Really? How do you get food, says Simmons.
Well, not by selling my body, but...
So what he retorts to that is, but that's a choice you have and I don't. What the fuck?
I mean, first of all, he's clearly never heard of a male prostitute. But what the fuck is right? Why would... That is a man lost who I think he's literally so lost that he doesn't recognize the fact that what he's saying is
wrong
and being
demeaning.
And even if you take that away, like, this is being recorded, this is on an interview, like, why would you even begin to think this is right to say for your own personal, like, defense? Like, even on that lowest, like, my own self-preservation instinct, why would you think that this is okay to say in any way?
Because he's a fucking pig. To be honest, it's because he is a pig, and that will become more evident. Like, honestly,
like
you guys can go out there and listen to this interview. We are not making this up. We are not cherry picking the points from this. We are focusing in on the most disgusting things and giving the context.
I think
context.
overall, it's like a 50-minute interview.
No, it's
30?
only 26 minutes.
Really?
It is less than a half an hour. Go listen to it for yourself. Just go Google Terry Gross, Fresh Air, Gene Simmons. You will find this.
Like, I'm not denying any of the facts you said, but at, like, the weirdest, lowest level of, like, self-preservation, I can't believe that someone, like, even if you were in that even if you were under the premise that thought process was in any way, I guess if you thought it was right, you'd be able to say it anyway, which he did. But it's just flabbergasting to me that anyone would say that at all.
Right,
in an interview.
Even if you are trying to be controversial, even if you are trying to drum up that to sell a book, which is what he's trying to do, this is just something that people are going to dig up years from now and just being like, look at this fucking pig. You know? So, one of the next points.
I wonder what we'll get dug up for.
Right? This is why we wanted to play music, so you couldn't chop up our words. Terry Gross, what do you use to paint your face, and do you ever break out from that? One of the highlights from his answer, and honestly, not just highlights, he says, no, it's actually oil-based. It's Stein's makeup, like Stefan had said. But what he says is, my skin is more beautiful than yours. I would be quite more popular in jail if I so chose. Like, what? Why would you say that? Why would you? I'm going to be cute. I would be the subject to prison rape.
I just want to bring up a picture of Terry Gross. What is this, 2002?
Yep.
And I'm going to bring up a picture of Gene Simmons.
2002. Clicking sounds.
I don't know how accurate some of these are.
Kind of scruffy, you know?
Here's some pictures of Terry Gross. Here's some pictures of Gene. This is just overall a strange interaction between two people. Mostly on Gene Simmons' end. Because he's just making this incredibly awkward and uncomfortable.
So one of the next points I had, also wrong, is Terry Gross brings up the... she says she's seen him in fishnets. I think this is one that you should take on, Simmons. I'll take on Terry Gross. I'm Terry. Stefan is Simmons. So, are we on the same spot here? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I'm sure I saw you with fishnets.
We catch fish in fishnets.
I was sure I saw you in them, but that's all right. I trust you. I trust you on that.
Don't ever do that. I'm a man.
No. Let's get to the studded cod piece.
Oh, yes.
Do you have a sense of humor about that?
No.
Does that seem funny to you? Are you?
No. It holds my manhood.
That's right. Now, this is the...
Otherwise, it would be too much for you to take. You'd have to put the book down and confront life. The notion is that if you want to welcome me with open arms, I'm afraid you're also going to have to welcome me with open legs.
Now, that's a really obnoxious thing to say.
No, it's not. It's being... Why should I say something behind your back that I can't tell you to your face?
Wait. Has it come to this? Is this the only way that you can talk to women to do that shtick?
I was going to suggest that you get outside of the musty place where you can count the dust particles falling around you and get out in the world and see what everyone else is doing.
Having sex with you.
Well, if you choose, but you'd have to stand in line.
Well, that's the thing. We might well get to this since you keep bringing it up. Yeah, you've had 4,000.
I didn't actually. You did.
You write in your book you've had 4,600 sexual liaisons.
You're supposed to say, so far.
What a fucking pig. This guy, throughout the entire... Now, I wouldn't say the entire interview. There gets to a point where I feel like Simmons has gotten a sense that she has had enough, but we're not to that point yet. This is one of the points that
I feel gross just reading his
I
lines.
know. You made
Is
me
that
do
why
it.
you ping-ponged it to me?
Yeah. There is
We don't have music in the background. Somebody could think this is me.
I know. I know. I want to read one more, and there are more in our document here that he said, but I want to read one more from this. Gene Simmons. Women and their sisters and their moms seem to want to express their adoration and or fan worship, or perhaps they want to see my oral appendage actually does have a spin cycle and dry cycle, and whether or not it has the ability to whip up a good froth. Ladies, I'm here to tell you it does.
I like Terry Gross's response to this.
This is
Although she is being treated absolutely terribly.
what I wanted to say
after the
is
few comments he makes.
there was nothing that Terry Gross said to bring this up.
Of course not. No, this is not something that just comes out like this. But I like Terry Gross's response to this, which was, "Are you interested in music, or is the goal of being in a rock and roll band to have sex a lot?" Because she was there. People may not know this, but Terry Gross is an avid music fan. She's married to a jazz musician. It's one of her prime interests. And she had came seemingly with the intention here to talk about the theatrics and some of the musical aspects. And the interview just got shot to hell.
Yeah. Like
In no small terms. Shot to hell.
and it's like counterculture music. Through music that was counterculture, not just through lyric and message, but through structure. Like jazz is just, free form, a structure to tear music forms apart, basically. At least that's how I kind of see it. Other people kind of see it differently. So
you want to read Gene Simmons' final statement after her question, though?
I believe in my heart that anyone who gets up there and says what they're doing is art is on crack and is delusional. And that in point of fact, what their modus operandi initially, perhaps it changed when they started to question their sexuality, but clearly, initially, it was to get laid and makes lots of money. And anybody who tells you otherwise is lying to you. Now that just goes to show you what kind of artistry this man is. And I just want to comment, this man says verbatim, he never was an artist. He was there to make money off of you. And that's what we're about to get into. Let's just skim over this last one because it's kind of leads into how this narrative goes together. Opie and Anthony, they were a really popular East Coast show. They started in like 1995 on just the regular format of radio.
They had a very long tenure out there until they had their own falling out.
I was never really a big fan of Opie and Anthony, but
I wasn't either, but I was aware of their presence.
I always liked Jim Norton, and I like Jim and Sam, and that's kind of like the people who came after them once they went to XM. So Opie and Anthony were going to interview Simmons, and Simmons attempted to pick up the girlfriend of Anthony. And he...
Jill Nicole... I'm going to butcher this last
Nicholini?
Nicolini, who's a model.
And she was noticeably harassed in the office by Simmons. And to the extent she was like pinned against a wall by this man. And
I can my mental picture of this is Gene Simmons in full Kiss garb, just.
But that's the thing. He's just
baby.
he's just squishy, fat, old Gene Simmons,
Yeah, no
just making
makeup,
a
just
pass.
like, yeah, Jabba Hutt. Exactly.
But one of the things that this guy really drove home, Anthony, was Simmons later, when asked what he was doing later, replied to
Because
Anthony.
Anthony confronted him.
Yeah. Well, he didn't confront him directly about this. That's what I want to explicitly state about this. Anthony did not know what had transpired. So he asked him what I believe was on the air. What are you doing later, Gene? And he says, fucking your girlfriend. To which he laughs off because that's part of their shock jock. You know, that's what's popular at the time. This is like the end of like the Howard Stern kind of era where you could just like say this shit on the air.
Yeah, your bulldog from Frasier, the Gong Show style.
So the dude laughed it off, only to like later
Go
find
home
out.
later and
Talk to his girlfriend. That fucking Simmons like almost sexually assaulted the person.
Oof.
So that's kind of the end of the extreme tales of the misogynistic tales of the Simmons. But this one is leading into the still misogyny, but Bert Kreischer, big fan of Gene Simmons, and he was on a show.
Kiss,
and
was he a Kiss Army guy?
He wasn't a Kiss Army guy. I think he was like very young. Kreischer describes in this episode of this is taken directly from the Joe Rogan Experience, episode 249. You can go watch Kreischer recount this. There's no article out there about this. I transcribed this from this episode. Simmons was coming on a show that Bert was on, and he was telling the producer, "Oh, I'm a big Kiss fan.
You gotta let me talk to him. I love Kiss. I love Kiss. I gotta see him."
Right. So they slate him to do the interview with Simmons, and Kreischer has to do like a pre-interview talk, kind of like how we sit down, we talk about like what we're gonna do before we actually start spewing shit. We're gonna like kind of get a feel for what's going to go on. And he knocks on Simmons' door, and Simmons just tells him, he's like, "Oh, no, not now." Shuts the door in his face. So
that's okay. He might have had some pre-game ritual or whatever was going on. He tries
Kreischer
again.
specifically said, "Oh, maybe he's not a morning guy."
Yeah.
So he tries again later when they're just putting makeup on him, and Simmons says, "Didn't I tell you?" This is from Kreischer's mouth. "Didn't I tell you not to speak? Is he interviewing me? I don't want him to interview me." So just imagine your idol saying this to you, You feeling like you dressed up as this guy as like Halloween.
Hey, I've had a very firm stance. Don't meet your heroes.
Nope. Because they will just disappoint you. So Simmons, it turns out, did not want to be interviewed by a male. He wanted a particular woman from the show that he had picked to be the one leading the interview. So Bert, who is, I don't know the man specifically, but he's just, honestly, out of all like the comics that I've seen, he just kind of seems like the most jolly. It just kind of
he has a Santa Claus-esque character
he's
about
not,
him.
He's not my favorite stand-up comic. I still find him funny.
I don't actually know who he is.
He just had a new Netflix special come out.
I'm not a. Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is Bert Kreischer for you.
Okay, yeah, I've seen him.
So Kreischer is told by the producers he can sit on the couch and aid in the interview. He does it. The interview goes live. Bert aids where he can, and then, to his own narrative, things go well. Then they go to a break, and the woman, and I left her name out just because I don't want to like objectify her or anything. He only refers to her in the first as like her first name. I don't know her last name either, so I kind of feel like he wanted to withhold.
Yeah, he might have even used a different first name. Protect the innocent.
He basically says she goes up to bat for his fandom just to get Simmons to like talk to him, and
which is honestly a very nice thing to do.
Yeah. They go to break, and she tells Simmons that Bert admires him. He was a big KISS fan, and Simmons says to her, "Really?" To which Bert starts to pipe up, and then
yeah, man, Creatures of the Night was the best album ever.
And Simmons says, "Shut up! I'm talking to her." But you're talking about me, and he literally tells him to turn around, and he turns around to the stage crew, and everybody has this shit in their ears.
Yeah,
and they're just like flabbergasted. So, whoever was running this gig on behalf of Bert, like comes out and shuts it down.
It's over.
It's like, I know this guy. Fuck this guy. Yeah. So they shut it down, and they're like, okay, I think we have had enough for this interview. And
I gotta tell you, man, Bert handled that better than me. I would have
cried.
I would have been pissed.
Shit in your hand and threw it through the fucking cage mesh.
Yeah, something like that. I would have been pissed.
Basically, Gene started to protest. He's like, oh, I didn't even get to like plug my product or anything like that. And they're like, nah, we think we're done. We're done.
Wrap it up.
So, this is leading into how Simmons is just a...
I mean, yeah, this wraps up the misogynistic portion. But his money-grubbing...
And the fan disappointment. That kind of like brought it back around to
shitting on your own fans. But I mean, it's very evident that he has no respect for them whatsoever, even due to his statements previously where he only sees them as bank teller machines. All he wants is the cash.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he helped bury Dimebag and fucking Vinnie Paul in KISS caskets because money.
Right?
At this point I have very little faith in any fact that he had any respect for them. Mm-hmm. Other than that, by burying them in them, they'd see Pantera fans would see that as I should like KISS too because they like KISS.
Or just even that, there's just the clout.
Yeah.
So this still has to do with this is going back to Kevin Smith on Opie and Anthony, and this is about the money bag.
He went on that show, and then they all were talking about it. I didn't know this was on Opie and Anthony too. They were probably all just sitting there talking garbo about Gene Simmons, just like, man, what a jack off.
So this was actually, I listened to this and transcribed it, and Kevin Smith was talking about how he met Gene Simmons at just like a Comic-Con, and or not a con, a store, comic store. And
where else would Kevin Smith be hanging out? I literally just picture him traveling the country going to comic book store.
What a life.
You got Spider-Man issue 1? No? Okay, I'm going to the next one. He just like hops in an RV.
You got the issue of DC Comics Batman where they crucify Ben Affleck. They just flay him alive. Yeah, I want that one. So, Kevin states that he is not a big KISS fan, but he has a friend who is, and he wants to meet Simmons just so he can tell his friend, oh man, I met Gene Simmons.
Yeah.
So there's a mutual acquaintance introduces them. So Smith is just saying within 2 minutes, Simmons is just telling him about every single project that he is involved in.
That seems interesting to me that Gene Simmons would acknowledge Kevin Smith as a Not that I have disbelief that he would not acknowledge Kevin Smith as like a content producer, but just like, oh, this is a guy that I can share all my ideas with and it'll take them somewhere. Because that's the exact mindset that somebody opening a notebook full of scribbles. It's like a fucking meth head coming up at you at the Clark gas station, just be like, I got all these great ideas. You want to hear about them?
I could see that, but like Kevin Smith is also like a pretty big time director, I could see how like Simmons would be like, oh,
you can give me somewhere with these ideas, but
right?
It's like like I said, it's like a goddamn meth head just coming up at you at the gas station. Just like,
hey man, I got these ideas. I got these ideas written in this notebook.
I got ideas for a movie. Yeah.
So the cream of this story is he shows Smith a bag with a $sign on it, professing, and this is quote from Smith in this episode. Quote, see this as Simmons. This is Kevin Smith being Simmons.
What you got that notebook? I'm Kevin Smith. What you got in that notebook there, Gene?
Simmons says, according to Smith, see this? This is my future. It's gonna make me a billionaire. Nobody thought to copyright the bag with a money sign on it, so I did. So this leads into
the laundry list. I should say CVS receipt list long patent ideas that this fucking asshole came up with.
Oh man!
And the first one, I have seen this on multiple news platforms from metal forums. You want to share that one right there?
No, you do it because you know what it is.
Fucking dude tried to patent the devil horns, the horns that everyone holds up in respect to whoever's on stage.
What?
Where you take your thumb and you put it over your
it's been
middle and ring finger, and you're left with your pinky and your pointer finger.
It's been disputed that Dio obviously did it before him, but Simmons doesn't care. Simmons knew, even going into the $sign on a money bag, that somebody had done it before him, but he wanted to be the one to trademark it.
Yeah.
His intention with that was to maybe sue Monopoly.
I'm going to get money from that weird guy with the little guy.
That was exactly what his intentions were, to get them on the technicality.
I'm going to be honest with you. I can't do battle with wolves like that. I just don't work like that. It's never going to happen. I can't fight in that kind of arena. I don't work like that.
I mean, we can't go like that for that much longer as a species. You know what I mean? Before long, there's just not going to be much left. I mean, the sharks are just going to eat it all, and what if the sharks eat it all, man? There's just going to be...
They'll get bloated and they'll turn into beached whales. God, I hope so. But then we have to eat off the rotting bits.
So, Stefan, you want to bring up the patent and trademark? This was from the same nosy.
Do you want these gems, or you want to go to the other ones?
No, the patent and trademark one. So, Simmons has attempted to register 182 trademarks.
And these in your reference to those numbers, these are only to the Gene Simmons ones and not the KISS
ones that you have there. I'm going to go through some of the more juicy ones that don't have his name in it. He tried to trademark Chefs of Rock.
Because I can...
Exotic Car Wash.
I can get behind...
Naked Car Wash, Nude Car Wash, Topless Car Wash, Symposium of Success, International Fight Club, Big Band, Trophy Wife, Sextasy, Dominatrix, Dominatrix.
Now, I get where you're coming from. And there's two things here. I can understand trying to get your name solidified, so that no matter what, if someone's trying to use your name, you're getting paid for it. I can also understand copyrighting some of these things as almost in our world as younger people grabbing up domain names, where it's just like somebody's gonna want this domain.
That's why I
domain
grabbed
name
our domain name.
Yeah. So I can kind of understand it.
So,
but I like I said, I just cannot imagine.
let's talk about Gene Simmons, media mogul.
Is he a media mogul?
But what I wrote here is the trademark that he applied for, and then the description that they applied to the application. So, Gene Simmons, media mogul, general feature magazine in the fields of entertainment, music, popular culture, celebrities, politics, film, business, personal finance, and lifestyles. Gene Simmons, mogul, providing online, non-downloadable general feature magazines in the fields of exactly what I just said. Gene Simmons, Titans of Rock, entertainment services in the nature of live musical performances, yada, 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 yada.
I don't...
Gene Simmons, just Gene Simmons, and this was some, like, cursive writing, body lotion, facial cleansers, facial moisturizers.
Here's the real thing I don't understand about this is who the fuck is going to buy lotions, face cleansers, exfoliating products, or whatever,
squishy
to look
face
like
Gene
fucking Gene Simmons? The guy looks like
he looks like chewed bubblegum.
He looks like fucking shit.
Oh man, he looks like that fucking orc who's just like
Grishnak.
kill them all.
Looks like fucking Grishnak.
So we got Gene Simmons, Gene Simmons House of
I just
Horrors,
got Barg pictures.
Gene Simmons groupies, Gene Simmons School of Rock.
He looks like this orc, or you mean the other one?
No, the white-faced one with the puffy eye.
What was his name?
So yeah, the Gene Simmons School of Rock, Gene Simmons Legacy, Gene Simmons House of Terror, Gene Simmons.
You're looking at this guy.
Yes.
Gothmog.
Yes. That is the closest representation to Gene
Lieutenant of
Simmons
Marvel.
as I can put into the LOTR universe.
Yeah, Grishnak looks a lot different. He does kind of look like the guy from the Goonies, Sloth. That's a different story. All right.
So the last of his ridiculous copyrights, Zipper, Because It's My Life, Space Hunter.
Is a Gene Simmons zipper like go over?
No, this isn't Gene Simmons anything. This is verbatim, quote unquote Zipper, quote unquote Because It's My Life, quote unquote Space Hunter, quote unquote I want to marry a millionaire. So I'm going to stop saying quote unquote.
Okay,
I'm just going to put
I want to marry a millionaire. I think he's aiming for like some sort of reality TV show. I feel like these are just like attempting to buy domain names to an extent. So I don't know if I fault him too bad because it's sort of a good way to just be able to snag free
keep
money
going because they get better. There's shit girls say where it's $pound IT girls say me Inc. Global Art Bank, Titans of Rock, which you already
Global
mentioned.
Art Bank. What is he hoping Sweden opens up a fucking collective
For all your fucking stolen Nazi paintings.
all that art somewhere? It's gonna end up somewhere.
Okay, so these are two of some of the best. Women are from Mars. Men have ? Enos. That's the question. The question mark is supposed to be the P in penis. So women are from Mars. Men have penis, and
I gotta say,
Enos.
I gotta say, I'm just shocked the original lineup from KISS lasted as long as it did. With I just being on a bus with a guy like this. Oofed.
And lastly,
because he's the kind of guy, He obviously already has the notebook. He's walking around. He's telling you all his great ideas constantly.
It sounds like a few people that I know that I have since stopped working with because they never stop having these great ideas. And granted, Gene Simmons made $300 fucking million. I would love to not make that much money and just like have some fucking integrity and not deal with those fucking people. Because those kind of people will find success through disgusting means. No matter what it is, they will find some sort of avenue like mouse to cheese because they gnaw through the walls.
Gene Simmons says he didn't sell his body because he sold his soul.
What soul?
Exactly. The guy just... What? Look at this other stuff that he sold that I didn't... I knew about the KISS caskets. But the
how about
empty
guitar
bags? The empty guitar bags labeled air guitar strings.
They made millions off that shit. They sold thousands of units of that shit. And apparently, it is one of the most coveted KISS memorabilia items to this day.
That's just bizarre collector stuff, though. But come on. That's like buying a pet rock. What are you people doing?
KISS condoms.
Now I'm taking stock of what dumb things I have in my home. Do I have a dumb product that is an empty bag of air?
Have you ever bought that? I don't know. I have since, I'm glad I kind of got exposed to heavy metal and the bullshit that it is at a very young age. I love metal. I fucking love the music. But holy shit, is there a long story of bullshit that goes along with it. And I mean to expose that.
We're bringing you down.
Hence this op-ed of one of the most guilty parties. KISS.
Shamelessly guilty.
Gene Simmons.
Gene Simmons specifically. I mean, we could look into the other members, but this mostly came to be because of the Terry Gross interview you saw, or you heard.
No, that was well after the fact, after I started digging. Like, I found this after I started, like, Gene Simmons is a piece of shit. He's done this, he's done that. It's shady business practices. And then I found that after the fact, and I was just like, whoa.
And you can get the transcript. Literally, all you have to type in is Terry Gross, Gene Simmons.
I'm going to link the transcript and the interview in the comments, or in the description, just so people can find this. Like, just go listen to it for yourselves. There is nothing that we have said here that is not true. To some people, it might be like, no shit. To some people, it might be like, wow.
I had no idea.
Really? Going into this, you didn't know?
No, I knew Gene Simmons was a piece of shit. I was just
But did you know that he was... I knew he was a piece of shit, but I didn't know he was this kind of a piece of shit.
I was not aware of the depths of depravity for the misogynistic and female, basically sexual harassment. That's some shit you get called in the corporate for.
Yeah.
Just like, you can't be doing that.
One of the things that I was amazed with is that he has not been called out in the current climate for what he's done in the past.
Let's be honest. KISS has slipped into a lull of complete irrelevancy.
They have.
Which is part of his frustration. But honestly, you should be glad, because if it did come to the forefront, people would dig this shit up right away. I mean, we just did. And there are people that are actively out there just digging to undermine people constantly.
I am not one of those people.
We just did it.
And yeah, I just went through those points because I want to uncover the narrative of some like shitbags in the music style that I love.
Especially after our previous episode where we were talking about the dirty dealings of how the music industry functions against, I mean, it literally is actively working against majority of artists. Damn near.
Yeah, and some people would see him as somebody who's taken a stance against that and taken, as an artist, taken the reins of his own rights. But no, fuck that guy. He is the same kind of entity where the guy's worth $300 million. He's not doing anybody any favors. He is sucking the fucking the marrow up for himself.
He got to a teat and he won't let a runt get its fill. That's what it is. He's got a teat and he ain't moving. He won't let the runt of the litter get a touch of that milk from mama.
So should we put this KISS op-ed in the
put
the
a
KISS
nail
casket?
Put a nail in the KISS casket. You took the words right out of my mouth.
All right. In Stefan's words, sorry, Gene, you got shot through a hole.
Got shot to hell.
This has been Dougie Dilf for an op-ed for Radio Loud. And
Stefan Weber.
We love you.
Peace. Cut that out.